Welcome to Let's Write, the podcast where we complain about movies that never got made and then decide to just do it ourselves. I'm Ryan, and with me, as always, is my co host, Julian.
Salty jazz? I've already done salty jazz. Savory jazz.
You know what? I'm not even upset this time because today it's a very special episode because we have a very special guest joining us today. Joining us for this episode is host of Billion Arcade on Twitch, our very own Troublemaker, Dana.
Hello.
And we have brought her on for this very special episode because it is genuinely a special episode, at least to us, in a very small segment of the world's population. I think the topic that we chose for today is just so obscenely important to like such a small portion of the population. But to that small portion of the population, this was everything for a good span of like 2 or 3 years. In this writer's room today, we are attempting to adapt the interactive website turned global phenomenon, Neopets. And for those not in the know, Neopets was an online, game is probably selling it a little bit short. It was as an experience where it's a website where you got to join this community, adopt sort of an online pet, and then you took care of that pet by feeding it, training it, playing with it, and things like that. That pet would also serve as sort of like your avatar, exploring kind of this like entire virtual world called Neopia. It's like sort of different locations that had activities and things that you could earn currency in that you would use to buy more things for your Neopet and so on and so forth. But over time, actually like a pretty relatively short amount of time, if I remember correctly, it's became a lot more complex. They just began to layer on more and more layers of depth to this experience to the point where it had this really rich, robust player-run economy with player-run shops. There was player-owned property. There was a functional stock market. And then on top of that, they started to add in kind of like a story expanding events that sort of introduced new lore and characters and really fleshed out this Neopia from just being kind of a interactive pet simulator to this like really fleshed out like fantasy world that you could explore. And I think to me, like Neopets, and I don't know if you guys have had a similar experience, but it's maybe the most stark generational divide that I've ever seen. The point where like when you bring up Neopets, the reaction is almost exclusively like, "Oh my god, Neopets!" or "What is a Neopet?"
Or what?
Oh man, I think it's like when you talk to Neopets to people who haven't played it or weren't up in that kind of that generation that got caught up in it, it's almost like you can see in their eyes, it's like a Berenstain Bears moment where like they begin to question their own reality. Like this wasn't my world. Like I've stepped into a world where this thing called Neopets apparently existed and it didn't exist in the one I came from. Because like legitimately, if you were a part of it during that like I don't know 5 maybe 10 year period where it was like peak Neopets, it was with like maybe only the smallest, tiniest sprinkle of exaggeration, like the biggest thing in the world. And it's really just hard to overstate how big Neopets was at its peak, right? I think I looked up some statistics on it, and at its height, Neopets had over 25 million accounts and over 4 billion monthly page views. Like this was a obscenely popular site. And it wasn't just limited to the website either. It was a physical component to it as well. There were Neopets toys. There was a Neopets PlayStation games. There was a Neopets magazine. There was a Neopets breakfast cereal.
What?
There was Neopets was in McDonald's as the McDonald's toys. There was a Wizards of the Coast, the producers of Magic the Gathering, made a Neopets trading card game.
No way.
That lasted a couple of
I
times.
didn't know that either.
And in 2005, Warner Brothers began developing a movie adaptation, and they hired a producer, the creator of Jimmy Neutron, was going to head up this, Neopets kind of movie series. And obviously, being 14 years later at this point, I think we're probably pretty confident that movie is not going to come to fruition anytime soon. I think that age of Neopets being on every store corner and you can go buy a toy in Toys R Us or in Walmart or whatever is probably pretty far behind us.
Right.
So I think given that, I think there's pretty small chance that we'll ever get to see a Neopets movie. I think at this point we're more likely to see a Furbies movie than we would
Oh
a
no.
Neopets movie. So with that in mind, like given that it's genuinely like I don't think there's been a brand that has had as much of an immediate impact on at least our generation's lives and as little kind of staying power. I say we kind of rectify that to the best of our ability and let's see what we can come up with for our own version of what a Neopets movie could be. So I think as usual for these topics, we're just going to set some kind of ground rules for ourselves, some just kind of grounding concepts to sort of get us started here. And I think one we kind of talked about this off the air a little bit while we were brainstorming, but I think we want to make a movie that's about Neopets or set in the world of Neopets, the fictional kind of Neopia world. I think when I was kind of talking about this idea to some friends, like a lot of them were wondering, like, is it gonna be about a movie in Neopets or like about Neopets? Because like if you look it up, the story of Neopets could absolutely be a movie by itself. It's an insane story from like the birth of it as this kind of joke website. It was briefly linked to Scientology. It was purchased by Viacom, and it was like a Nickelodeon sort of brand for a little bit. This whole arc of it could definitely be a movie, but that's not this project. I think this one we want to explore actually like the world of Neopets to the best of our ability. Secondly, I think we are adults at this point, but Neopets was, I think, fundamentally kind of designed and created as sort of a kid-friendly experience, as anyone who trawled those forums would attest to. Like they did a lot of work to try to maintain as best as they could kind of a kid-friendly environment. So I think we want to make it a kid-friendly movie, but again, like if it can appeal to adults, especially our generation who would have a lot of nostalgia and interest in kind of revisiting this, that would be the best case scenario. And then finally, I think given that you tell anyone under the age of 20, like, hey, did you play Neopets or do you play Neopets? Do you even know what Neopets is? Like, you're going to get the blankest of blank stares. Like, we have to sort of acknowledge that if this is a kid's movie, the vast, vast majority of people who are going to come watch this are going to have no idea what Neopets is. And given the state of that website, we'll probably have no way to learn what Neopets is until the movie comes out. So I think kind of finding a way to give a fresh start to the brand in some way and allow kind of new fans to discover it through this movie, I think would be ideal. So cool. I think personally, I played a lot of Neopets for like a 2 or 3 year period, probably. Again, like that 2 or 3 years, that was bigger than Pokemon for me. It was like the biggest thing in the world. But from your guys' perspective, what was your experience with Neopets like? What do you guys remember? What kind of would interest you when we think about like a potential Neopets movie?
So I played since I was 12, and honestly, it's been a huge like life impact for me, right? Like it taught me how to code in HTML. Like I learned how to hack. I I learned the stock market. Like I just remember like doing all these random things and just trying to like be a part of this economy and, trick other kids into giving me their Neo points and what.
Well, this was actually a very elaborate sting operation. Did you get the recording? We got her? All right. Send them in.
Oh, okay. Oh, no.
I've actually heard that a lot, like a really common refrain of like kids learning how to code through Neopets. Like this, if you weren't part of that, they had a lot of places where you could kind of implement HTML code, like which, at the time was the peak of web design.
Yeah.
But I think like that allowed an avenue for a lot of kids to start to learn how to like build web pages and how to like put the, their web development skills. And I think that I wouldn't kind of belittle like probably how many current web developers and how many, coders probably got their start like on these Neopets message boards or on these Neopets guild pages or whatnot.
Absolutely.
That's kind of cool.
Yeah. And the community itself too, right? Like there was just so many awesome people. And because it was a kid-friendly environment, no one could like curse each other out and all this stuff that are on forums today. Like it just had this wholesomeness that as a 12-year-old going on to 28-year-old really loves.
28-year-old.
12-year-old Dana is like, this is a wholesome environment. How can I exploit this?
Exactly.
I pretty much just always wanted a paintbrush and I never got one. So that's pretty much all I have to say about Neopets.
It's funny because like Neopets, I think did teach me like that rich poor divide, it really educated me on that like capitalism tier system because like the people who started with Neopets at the very beginning, versus the people who joined it a couple years into it, like the discrepancy in wealth there was insane because you could accumulate
Oh
so
yeah.
much resources like in those first years where nothing was regulated, and then just it would just carry you through
Oh
the
yeah.
rest of those following years. You just see people with like these paintbrushes and be like, "That's a $50 million or Neo point transaction there."
Yeah.
Like that, how do you even get that many Neo points?
And they had
I
like
can tell you how.
they had these guys that had shop fronts. They had like 5 of every brush, and I'm like, I can't even get one. 'Cause wasn't it like to get them, if you weren't gonna buy them, you either had to like they were like kind of random, right? Weren't they given out at random? Like it was like a random event in world would happen, or you click on a certain. I remember clicking on parts of the map because I was told that like it was a secret where if you clicked on the right spot, it would appear or something. Wasn't that kind of? Am I remember that completely wrong?
It wasn't the main way to acquire them, but there were like random events sprinkled throughout the world that they would just happen. Be like, I remember the Pants Devil, was that his name? He would
Oh,
just steal
yes.
items from you, just to show up at random points if you refreshed a page and steal stuff.
So then, how did you get paint? This is totally off the topic of what we're trying to do today, but just so
No,
that
this
I can,
rest of the podcast is this is a tutorial on
just so I can
Neopets.
close this loop from my childhood. How did you actually? How did you get paintbrushes?
The only way I knew was to buy them.
Right.
I never once got a random paintbrush.
I remember the really, really rare ones were available in like this secret shop in Fairyland, which would only appear for like 15 minutes a day or something like that. You get in there and all the items would be like 3 million Neo points, like 5 million Neo points. Like they'd be the top tier like Battle Dome items or like paintbrushes or the potions or whatever. So that I remember that being a route you could go to. And kind of even getting into the shop was kind of cool, and then realizing like it's gonna take me 50 years to get enough Neo points to buy anything in here was definitely a wake up call. But I think that's a good point because like Neopets at the time, like it had that kind of feel to me of like almost like mystery or like a sense of discovery, and
Right.
that like you would hear things like, yeah, if you click on this thing and then this thing, and
Yeah,
you go
yeah.
to this place, and like at 4 o'clock every day, like this happens, and like some of it
Yeah.
would be true. Like
Yeah.
Yeah.
the website was so complex, and this virtual world was so in depth that a lot of those things were real, and it was just it's always constant sense of discovery.
Do you guys remember do you remember also the omelets? I
Oh,
distinctly
yeah.
remember all the varieties of omelets.
Yeah, the most cash efficient way to feed your pet. 'Cause you
Is
get
that's what it
three-
was, right?
you get
Yeah.
three meals out
The
of it.
jelly?
The jelly got 2 meals out of it though. So
Yeah,
like,
forgot
that's
but
jelly.
between the two of them, it was good going.
I feel like in the movie as like a nice Easter egg nod to the long time. Maybe that's probably how we can nod to people who were in the know.
Right.
Is those little touches like
Yeah.
incorporating the paintbrushes, incorporating the omelets into the background.
Right.
You know, like just that might be a nice way to.
Absolutely.
Speak to that.
It was just such a rich community. There would be these in jokes and these running gags. I remember like the Jelly World thing would be like for like 4 or 5 years. It just every time it came up, the developers would like deny it existed. Like we don't know what Jelly World is. Like stop asking about Jelly World. We don't know what that is. And you could only access it by like typing in the URL.
Yeah.
It's just like little things like that. They were just like and it wasn't like one or two things. It was like hundreds of things in this virtual world that you would just discover and find. I think that's to me the core of the experience for me at least was this sense of discovery and sense
Sure.
of like I'm constantly learning things. Like it feels like a world because it's not like I can just go through a walkthrough and see like, oh, you do X, Y, and Z to do these things. It was just like constant like figuring things out and learning things and hearing rumors and chasing down the
Right.
rumors, you know. And that felt adventurous, you know, at the
It
time.
did.
It felt fun. So I think as we go into this project, one of the kind of core concepts that like as soon as we started talking about this, I was really interested in pursuing or maybe touching on some form is like what is the relationship between Neopets and humans? Because like as this like kind of Neopets thing got more and more elaborate, it became more and more apparent that in this world they constructed, there are no humans,
Yeah.
and yet they're your pets somehow. You would feed them, they talk to you, like. But in like the storyline, there was never be like a human that just walks up and lives there, you know, or adopts a Neopet. They were like, they were intelligent people that this is their society, and
Right.
you know. So I'm curious about that. I'd love to like, not necessarily like, or maybe explain that, but like just in some sense, like maybe exploring that, like a relationship between the human and the Neopet, like what that means, why that exists, you know.
I never really
it's
thought
true.
of it that way because like I always assumed like the users, the people who had the pets, like that was their personification was just being like the user. Like
So like
Yeah.
you are the pet sort of thing.
yeah.
I
Or not
think-
you're the pet, but like you are like there are humans by proxy of the user. Like
Well,
Does that make sense?
it's interesting too because it's built into the title, right? It's like Neopet.
Right.
So there is that ownership aspect that's kind of built into the core branding of the property. So there's this kind of interest. It's I think we have to make that decision early on. Is it something where humans are involved, or is it something where we just ignore that part of it and that's just what they're called?
But I think Ryan has a point too. In like, if you read any of the lore, anything, like there is never a presence of a human. It's always like war or like evil people like that are other types of Neopets. So it's interesting.
Yeah, I think like in the same sense of like I think a movie that did this sort of like nostalgia but also new for kids thing really well was the Lego movie, you know?
Right.
And I think in that movie they did sort of explore the relationship between like the toys and people, like what that means to people, like why the idea of Lego is so powerful. And not to like completely ape on their style, but I think something in that vein could be really interesting of like what is a relationship between a Neopet and a human, like why was that so powerful for kids back in the day, and like how can we like organically tie that into a story.
When we were thinking about this, like, and just kind of talking before the podcast, in my mind, the two best guiding stars of movies that have already come out that we could use was Lego Movie was one of them in terms of the relationship, like you said, between human and the property. Zootopia also, I think, was incredibly good at the world building aspect, which is a big part of because the Neopets is not just like creatures, it's a society,
Right.
in the way that like Lego didn't have that component. So I think using Zootopia from an aspect of like how they established the society in the world could be really helpful for us, because I think that's almost like a one-to-one translation, and just in terms of like how they did that and how Neopets is set up.
I can agree
So
with
I think something in the Newtopia, Jesus Christ,
Neotopia.
Neotopia, something in the Zootopia sphere, but maybe with the overarching themes of the Lego movie might be a good like pathway to walk for this kind of film.
I like it. And sort of like just as a general plot conceit, Dana, you sort of brought this up before the podcast, and I think instantly I was like, yes, it's that. I think it's that. Is like in the 80s and 90s, there's like almost a distinct genre of kids movies of kids falling into a fantasy world and like being a fish out of water sort of story, and then like returning to the real world, like having learned a powerful lesson or something like that. And there's like 50 movies that have done this, but I feel like that genre has definitely like fallen off. Like it was very a product of its time. And I think if we want just an immediate way to capture that sense of nostalgia without like just being a nostalgia movie, is like maybe just that as being the plot conceit, I think is such a cool idea.
Yeah.
It's like a kid gets brought into this world.
Right.
But do we think they would stay a kid, or would they be turned into a Neopet? And if they were, why is it an Asia?
That's a weird way to pronounce loop, but I mean, do you? Which is another thing. Like I feel like if you ask 20 kids from this generation, like their favorite Neopet, you'd get 20 different answers, which was
Absolutely.
props to them for the creation of these creatures.
So I think something I'd like to start, or a place I'd like to start and then build from, and we've addressed it a little bit, but I'd like to drill into it a little bit more, is I want the film to capture the sense of discovery that you were talking about.
Exploration.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
in a maybe not meta is a strong word, but in the way that the Lego movie kind of meta contextually was captured what is the best about Legos, which is that like the story revolved around him being a master builder.
Sure.
In the same way that kids were through the toy Lego were given that kind of fantasy of like I can create anything.
Yeah.
So like I want to drill down a little bit more into like in terms of the meta part of the film, like how does the narrative that we're going to craft represent what we all enjoyed the most about Neopets? Does that
like that?
So like what, I guess a good place to start is like you log on to Neopets. What do you do? Like what was your cycle of events on that webpage?
I collect interest from the bank.
Oh my God, me too. That was the first thing I went to do every single time.
If you never played Neopets, there's a thing where if you deposit any Neopoints into your bank, you can't collect interest from it that day, which was like you collected interest on a daily basis. And it was the worst feeling in the world as a kid to accidentally deposit Neopets and forget to collect your interest and just realize that a second too late. And that has been scarred into my psyche. Like the countless Neopoints I wasted depositing first.
But you would go through like, you would then, I mean, at least for me, I'll go through mine and you guys tell me if you had a similar, but it was like, you would probably play the games, right? You'd play your daily games to earn your daily quotient of Neopoints that you could earn. That's what it was, right? It was like a limited quotient of Neopoints you could earn a day.
I think it was you could play each game 3 times.
Yes.
Oh, that's what it was. That's
yes,
what it was.
except for some games, like there were card games you could play like as many times as you wanted.
And then you'd feed your pet.
Cheat.
Yeah,
Cheat was great.
Cheat was great. I love Cheat.
And then you usually like visit the omelet, giant omelet, and then get some omelet and feed your pet. You kind of, there was this cyclical nature where you would come and you would do a routine of things. So I wonder if the world functions in that way, in which like, how can we incorporate the routine of the user running through the routine of their experience on the website? How can we incorporate that into the plot? Does that make sense? Because I think if we establish a narrative framework like that, I think that's how you'll get that. Because I think kids will just, you'll innately pick up on that when you start watching the movie. It'll just feel like you'll feel that loop. I think it's like maybe we work in the games somehow. Like they got to go compete to earn their money. Like that's their daily.
Oh, absolutely.
You know, and then they got to go get their food from the I think there is a way we can construct, at least in the act 1, like when we're introduced to when the kid is introduced to the world, and you kind of like in the same way that Zootopia had that thing where she's like riding into Zootopia for the first time, she sees all the different areas where all the animals lives, and she kind of understands how they all function. Like that sort of element of our movie could introduce you to this cyclical nature of their life.
So can I make a suggestion?
Sure.
Please.
That when we're sucked into this world, we're actually put on the space shuttle. Oh, not the shuttle, the satellite.
Oh, okay.
Because in what I'm thinking, the evil Dr. Sloth is how we got teleported into this world somehow. And so we would be on that space station, and that's how you see all of Neopia and have to escape the space station. I'm just saying, it is an idea.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
I think like when you look back at the lore of Neopets, and again it was a very kid friendly brand, so it's not exactly highbrow fiction or anything like that. But I think Sloth was one of the like most core villains, right? So I think at some point they retconned it to be that the Neopets were born from Sloth's experiments. So he's actually like he tried to like populate a planet with like mutant creatures, and then magic came into the planet and like turned them into Neopets, like good creatures. And so he's like been plotting, I guess, in various events to like retake his creations or whatever. So I think that's an interesting line that we should chase at some point. Like I think if you were to pull out any iconic Neopets villains, I think it'd probably Sloth would definitely be up there. I'm really captured by this meta sort of narrative that you're talking about, though, because I think, like in some sense, like it's so hard to separate like fans' experience with Neopets from like the rise and the fall of that brand, right?
Right.
Like I feel like I have this thought passes through my head like once a month of like, if I ever made $1 billion, the first 100 million would go to buy the Neopets brand and just bring it back. Like
Same.
it's just like it. Like I think seeing that decline, and like unlike like a Pokemon or like a Disney or something where like that was passed on to another generation. So even if you're not playing Pokemon every day, or even if you're not watching the classic Disney movies, they're still being appreciated. Like seeing the state of Neopets and like how close it is to just disappearing from public consciousness or availability completely, I think is like has been a really powerful kind of anti-nostalgia almost to like the fans of the game, to really be like, we're sort of on the brink of like something that was the biggest thing in our lives for a little while just never existing. Like no one will ever know what Neopets was. No one will ever be able to access it. All of those memories, like all of those places will be gone because it's a web environment, And I think, Dana, you were like bringing up a news article you read before the show where like Neopets has in its current form less than 2 years to live because Flash is being discontinued. And all of Neopets is built on Flash. And unless they decide to invest heavily in just rebuilding this website in HTML5, which so far they have not really shown a strong pace of doing so, there's a very good possibility in 2 years, like the Neopets that we grew up with is just completely unavailable. That's a weird kind of scary thought.
I kind of like the idea of that somehow being portrayed in the movie.
I think so. Like, what if we what if we discovered kind of a Neopia, I guess, in decline? Like that's where we enter the movie, and it's almost. Have you guys seen the Wizard of Oz sequel, Dorothy and Oz or something like that? It was a live action movie, came out in like the 70s or 80s or 90s, something like that. It was a direct kind of sequel to the first one in the sense that like they adapted the second book, but Dorothy arrives in Oz again, and like it's just like completely destroyed almost. Like everyone has been turned to stone. There's these like horrifying creatures called the Wheelies, who are people with like wheels for hands, and they roll around on them. It's a terrifying movie.
Yeah.
It's like it's generally like as for a kids movie, it's like straight horror. Like there's the main villain is stealing people's heads because they've all been turned to stone, so that she can have different heads that she switches to. Because like,
What?
that's like what she wants to do. It's a terrifying movie, but like
Yeah.
I do remember like how effective that was. Like introduction to Oz, like getting back there and being like, "Where's the Munchkins?" Like, oh my God, she found the Cowardly Lion. He's a statue now. Like it was like really like investing
it's
into the
messed
story of like, oh my God, what happened? And like she has to solve this problem. So I'm just saying like go that child scarring terrifying, but like maybe in some sense like seeing a Neopia like that has been in a state of decline for whatever reason, but by the end of the movie like it being revitalized and like life and magic being brought back into it, and in a sense like that mirroring like our hope for a revitalization of the Neopets brand itself, like a new wave of people being reconnected with it. I think that could be a really powerful kind of meta narrative tie.
I really love that. And just to like bring in more of the heart of Neopets, can we have that huge disparity in Neopoints and like in this version where the world is starting to decline? Is I don't know if you've seen the Neopoint economy like recently, but it's pretty bad. Like a new player right now will never get a paintbrush basically. And so it'd be cool to see like this like really rich people and a lot of poor people.
So can I say something on that topic?
Yeah.
Dana and I were talking yesterday actually about we were just having a chat about like story and narrative in general, and we were talking specifically about I was my kind of discussion question was, why is it that certain sci-fi or fantasy really hit in terms of the cultural zeitgeist and just really capture people's fascination, because like Game of Thrones is such a phenomenon, right? George R. R. Martin is not the first person to write sword and sorcery fantasy, and yet for some reason Targaryen and Stark and these things are much more real to people than the other 300 fantasy books that have come out in the last decade, right? Lord of the Rings, so real to people. That one arguably because it was one of the first like epic fantasies like that and kind of inspired that wave. But like Star Wars, like how many sci-fi space operas are there? Like these like random like Jupiter Ascending and Valerian. But why Star Wars? Like why did it? And so Dana said something, and she can elaborate on it a little bit. I just want to bring it in because it's exactly what you're talking about. She said something that like kind of blew my brain and that I had never really considered. And she said, well, those ones that are really capture people's fascination are unified by this common thread that they all drop you into a world in decline. And if you think about it, they all put you into a world that was great. So you're told, but currently either has declined or is on the verge of decline. Like Game of Thrones puts you in at the end of a summer and the beginning of a winter. That's going to be the worst winter of all time. It's the decline. It's the end of the Age of Heroes. Star Wars puts you in after the Jedi Order has been destroyed and in the worst time in that timeline. Lord of the Rings drops you in on the upon the basically the end of the or the threat of the end of the Age of Man, but it turns out to be the beginning of the Age of Man, but the end of the Age of the Elves and the because they all kind of leave at the end of Return of the King. They leave to go into the other. So there's this sense that you're put in right in the midst of this decline. And she said that, and I was like, that's nuts, because her thing was that makes you, as an audience member, without you knowing it, want to like cling to it and bring it back and bring it back to its glory that you've been told about. And that is maybe why it gets rooted in people's hearts so much. I mean, I'll let you elaborate on it.
No, I think you said it perfectly.
If you want, but she just kind of blew my brain. I've been thinking about it ever since. And because you just mentioned it, it's kind of this weird full circle that I think that it's basically saying I think that's a great way to go, that we drop into Neopia in decline. It's metatextually works. And also I think it would be the kind of thing that would really hook you, because you would have that yearning for what this world was,
Right.
even though weren't familiar, even if you weren't familiar with it.
Right.
Isn't that kind of nuts?
And those worlds are like those storylines always kind of hinge on like that spark of hope, that like tiny glimmer of hope that is threatened to be subsumed by this darkness all around it. And like because
Yes.
it sets up that world like that where we're on the brink of or past the brink of the end, that hope just feels so much more potent, like it feels so
Absolutely.
much more special. That's incredible. And I think that's where we are with Neopets and like what this movie would be, right?
Yeah.
It'd be like we're so close to seeing this go away. And so seeing this glimmer of hope, whether it's the characters in the movie or the movie itself for the fans, is such a powerful kind of glimmer of like what could be, and like how much like fans would latch onto that idea and like want to carry it through. That's powerful.
I think that's really cool. If we can figure out what the story devices of why the world is in decline, I think that would be a really compelling angle. And then I think the story kind of writes itself. It's a journey of the human character teaming up with maybe a core group of Neopet protagonists, Jellert, to then.
Again, you guys are pronouncing loop real weird. I don't know if it's an accent thing. Or...
Okay,
Aisha?
but we can all agree that at some point in their adventure, they meet a brother or sister duo of a flotsam and a jetsam
Hell yeah.
character that are just like the funniest character, right? Like they have to. That has to be like a Key and Peele style. Actually, let's just cast them.
Key and Peele, yeah.
Let's just cast them. Let's just do it. And Bruce has got to be in there somehow.
Yeah. Okay, that's fair.
Can I hit you with something?
Yeah.
Okay. So we talked about at the very beginning, like maybe we explore a little like what the relationship is between a human and a Neopet. Like why is this human being brought into this world? Like why does this Neopet world exist? But like humans are kind of like in the game version, like interacting with it. What if like Neopia and the human world are kind of like two sort of parallel worlds that are like symbiotically linked, and human children and Neopet children, like at birth, they're like form this kind of like bond between these two worlds, and they grow up together kind of, even though they're divided by physical space. They know there's like imaginary friends sort of almost thing. Like they guide each other's development, they provide companionship, and they learn. And
They're aware of each other.
I think to some like subconscious sense, or maybe you kind of grow out of it at a certain point as you become an adult, and you just remember, your imaginary friends as a child. And they they teach each other to hope and to be good people, and they go into the world, stronger because of that. What if for some reason, like because of like, maybe this is a little too on the nose, but like in the human world, like things are going so cynical and children are going detached from, like hope and optimism, and feeling like the world is kind of crushing them, that's kind of like severed this link. And so these generations of humans are growing up without their Neopets, and these generations of Neopets are growing up without their humans. And because of that, we're seeing like the darkness in humanity kind of seeping into the human world of like the corruption and dark forces and like
Sure.
evil. And that's why like that world is in like this slow decline. And maybe it's personified in kind of a cartoony way just to make it a little more of a kids movie, where like it's like literally like evil shadows or something, or monsters or something like that are growing because they're losing that hope that
Sure.
they would grow and foster by having a human companion.
Yeah.
What if the plot device is that a Neopet, like a young Neopet on that side, like figures out a way to cross over into the human world and comes to like figure out like why this is happening, and like accidentally brings the human back into the Neopets world, and together they have to figure out how to fix like kind of both of the worlds, sort of like
I love that.
to like teach each other how to hope again or something like that, and they go on an adventure in the Neopets world.
So now we spend the next hour fighting to the death over what that single Neopet.
Oh, shit.
Which Neopet is that single Neopet?
Oh, what have I done?
Oh no. But hold on. Let me hit you with another thing. What if that connection is passion? What if kids today, and I don't actually know this because I don't have kids, but what if like we're just losing passion for things? We're just kind of like watching television, consuming all the time, not really like thinking for ourselves. And so like, because I don't know about you guys, but for me, like Neopets, like gave me passion for many things.
Right.
Like I learned so much from the site and like through the community and everything. Like it just like if I had to wrap that entire experience up, it's passion.
Sure. I think that hits the nail on the head, because like I think why we remember Neopets so fondly is that even after we left the site, it wasn't just like that was a fun game, it was a diversion. Like we came out of it like I learned a little bit more about managing money. Like I learned
Right.
I learned what the stock market is. Like I learned how to code. Like I made friends. I learned how to run an organization when when you run a guild or something like
Yeah.
that. Like I learned responsibility because I had to maintain this pet and like take care of them and stuff like that. Like you came out of that with like real skills. I think in some
Right.
sense, like maybe that's the key. Like that's what maybe this sounds like such an old fogey sort of thing to do, but like
Yeah.
that's what kids are missing these days. Like they don't
Yeah.
have that environment to teach them things. But like I think that could be a kind of a really powerful sort of like lesson. Like this kid kind of learns all of these real world skills that he kind of takes back into his own life. Like as sort of a metaphor for how all these fans through the years learned these real world skills through their time in Neopia and came out of the real world as like better formed, hopefully adults.
Yeah.
Like I think that's something really cool.
I like that a lot, and I think if it's something like if it's something like kids aren't exploring as much anymore, like they're not encouraged to explore or adventure, and because of that, they're just like because there's so much in the information era,
Right.
because so much comes to them,
Right.
they're not seeking out, and that's resulting in this lack of passion, this lack of motivation and discovery and adventure, and so they're not learning things. Like
Right.
kids are growing up not learning how to interact with other kids. Kids are growing up not learning skills, not learning how to write, not learning how to read very well. Because so much is presented to them in new ways. So I like that. I think that's a really cool. I think it's a really compelling arc, and I like the idea of having this at the core of it, this central relationship between a Neopet and a human character. I think that could be like kind of Detective Pikachu-y vibe. I think that could be really strong. Is there like I might be getting too specific right now, but is there like one of the Neopets that's considered like the mascot? Like Pikachu is kind of the mascot of Pokemon. Is there one Neopet that's like the mascot of the Neopets?
That's a good question.
Because I think
Yeah.
we're all joking about arguing over which Neopet, but I don't think
Yeah.
it's any of the ones that are our favorites. I think
Probably.
those
It's
could be
not.
incorporated, but
It is, and I can tell you in a second.
I almost feel like it's a
which one it
Kachik or maybe
That was definitely one of the more
Kachik
popular.
sounds
or a Shoiru.
correct. Hold on.
Shoiru, I
Yeah, it
think,
is the
was
Kachik.
the statistically most popular. I think.
Shoiru?
But I think I on the marketing material, I think the Kachik was pretty much everywhere.
That was everywhere,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
That was the one.
Which was totally wrong for a mascot. Again, Aishas are the cutest. But yeah, I was gonna say the Kachik. That one I remember being everywhere all the time.
So maybe it's a young,
It
and
kind
that's
of looks like a Pikachu.
yeah, kind of
kinda
like it's totally
does.
the
Yeah.
So maybe it's a young Kachik that kind of crosses over, and then and then comes back, and then they just kind of befriend all these other.
Sure.
Yeah, and we
I
can
think
make sure to
absolutely, like Wizards of Oz style, like gathering this group of people.
Yeah.
Like every new encounter they have, they bring a new person into their group, and by the end of it, they have this like lineup of characters. Maybe like as you point out, like matching like the 4 Neopet limit you had in the account. Like,
Exactly.
this kid and his 4 Neopets sort of thing.
I like that a lot because
be
then
really fun.
that's great because then he can have the Kachik or like the main one, and then each
And
of us
3
can have a
loops.
choice.
3 red loops.
Can have a Loop, a Gellert, and a
Aisha.
Aisha.
By the way, you can dress up Neopets now, and it's amazing. Thank you.
So I hate to say this because it's my single least favorite storytelling or cinematic trope, but I kind of feel like it has to start with a narrated prologue. Like I hate that,
How?
but I can't think of any other way because the thing is like you can't just drop people into Neopia in decline right away. I think there has to be something, unless you guys can think of a better idea. Doesn't there have to be some sort of brief, like this was Neopets, and it's like the Kachik is narrating, and it's like this is Neopia, and introduce you to that cyclical cycle of like the idealized, and then it's like this is what it is now, and then we start the story there. Like I think there kind of has to be that, even though I think that's lazy writing.
I almost like it better if we actually start an action of like the Kachik like running away from something, and we're just kind of like thrown into the action a little bit, and then it comes into our world, and like through pulling the kid into Neopets, and then the Kachik somehow explaining a little bit through showing more than telling.
Okay, then let me pitch you something. What about this? What if Dr. Sloth is going to be our big bad? And you just said, I think, if that in the lore he was trying to create like these creatures or something, and then Neopia was formed because magic came through and made it good. So if we consider Neopia his failed experiment, what would be his next logical step? He would then go to Earth, and then he'd say, well, if I can't destroy Neopia the way I wanted to, or do what I wanted to, or let's say I need to get rid of this so that I can try my thing again. Let me go to the world that it's linked to, and let me create technology. Like let me infiltrate the minds of the youth and destroy their link
Passion.
Right.
to Neopia. And maybe this Kachik stumbles upon this plot and kind of into the Spider-Verse, right? Like he
Yeah, it gets
stumbles upon the
tossed
thing
into the other
happening in the underneath the city, and through that method gets sucked into the wormhole into the world, and then they kind of the first act is him and the human working their way back into Neopia. Second act is kind of like traversing Neopia, seeing all the stuff. Third act would be kind of like I can't think of the word. My words are so bad today. I can't word. Fighting against Dr. Sloth's evil plot and basically saving Neopia and restoring it to its former glory.
Sure.
Now, here's a question I'd like to pose.
Uh-huh.
I know we won't write it, but do we want to leave it open for a sequel?
Sure.
I mean, we might write it. This podcast might just be Let's Neopets.
Let's Neopets.
I mean,
I'm down with that.
Yeah, I mean, I think like Zootopia is a perfect example of a movie that ends in a conclusive way, but you could write any number of stories in that world. So absolutely, I think the way we were talking about it leaves it open for a sequel because we end with Neopia being established again.
I think like the locations are so iconic. Like even just as a teaser for the next one, just for the fans, sort of, just to like tease out like the next location, like just to have a map. Like, all right, next place we're heading, we gotta head to Terror Mountain or something, and just the fans will know what that means, and for everyone else to be like, okay, that's sort of where the story is going next.
One of my favorite things from like Lord of the Rings was it didn't fully explain, and then by the end of the Fellowship, I wanted to know more, even though I had never read Lord of the Rings before. So I like that idea a lot. I think of just being like, we're gonna show on the map the next thing, and then just leave it at that, and let those kids like passion and wonder, like go and find out.
Oh, like I think, like if we follow that same kind of structure of like, that 80s 90s movie where like he comes back to the real world and like he's better and knows, he's fixes his problems. It was all his bullies, I feel like, with those movies, but whatever the problem is, like he gets past that, so he's becoming a better adult. And then in the Neopets world, like those Neopets are like ready to take on adventures again, or feeling inspired again, and they're going off to their next adventure, being like, and like now they're like adventurers, and like, oh, our next stop, like Terror Mountain or the Lost Desert or something like that, and they're about to go off and have an adventure. So like we see like both of them kind of growing through their bond and like ready to take on the next challenge.
I like that.
Oh, sorry, I'm thinking about the beginning still. Okay, I think so. Let me walk this through and then tell me if you think it works. Because I think Dana might be right. Maybe we don't have to do a narrated prologue, but maybe this is a way that we can do what I was talking about, where you establish that meta context of the cycle of like the daily cycle, but also introduce you to the declining world of Neopia. So what if it starts with the Kachik, kind of going about his daily routine, and he does the daily routine, right? He goes to his bank. There's not a lot of money. He goes to play the games to earn his money for the day. It's not, a lot of the games are shut down. He goes to the big omelet. It's kind of like there's not much left. He gets a little piece of omelet. So we kind of like, through his daily routine, we kind of remember that feeling of like, oh yeah, this is how every person, when they logged onto Neopets, this is what we did. We then got the money, then we went and played the games, and we, you get that cycle, but it's also serving a double function of showing you the world that you remember, but declining, and giving you that yearning of like, establishing the feeling we want to establish, which is I miss this, and it makes me sad that it's going away. Therefore, I want to make it come back.
What if the Kachik doesn't get any of the omelet because it's basically gone and he's starving?
I think I might be getting a little tense. I'm trying to keep it from being like this this like total dystopia. Like it's got to be there. I just think things are like closed down and like people are moving out. Like there's just not a lot going on.
Maybe it's like it's aspirational. Like you can tell like he's not in the best of life situations. Like he's not a rich Neopet, but like he's got like aspirations. Like he wants to like maybe instead of going to the Omnix, that's like all the way in like Tyranitar or whatever. That's not what it's called. I don't remember what it's called. But the dinosaur world, like maybe instead of all the way going, maybe he's like posted on his wall, like one day I'm gonna visit the giant omelet. Like it's like that's his dream, like to like have a full meal like at the giant omelet. Like that could be kind of interesting. Like
I love that.
Set up his character like that.
Oh, even better. Sorry.
No, go ahead.
Even better. He goes to the soup kitchen and dreams of the omelet.
Oh, there we go. Yeah,
kitchen.
I forgot about
like a travel poster. Like
and so then I think through that daily routine, at some point along his day, he stumbles onto the Dr. Sloth, and then he realizes what's happening because he like stumbles onto Dr. Sloth, going like, it's just as I planned. Everything's going according to plan. This world is collapsing, and he goes, "What the heck?" And then he gets sucked into the wormhole into the human world, and then we kind of have a great like 15-20 minutes set in with Kachik bouncing around.
Oh yeah. Well,
New York or something.
We talked Into the Spider-Verse. Can I throw something out there really quick of just like
Do it.
might be fun visual aesthetic? What if the real world is the live action normal world, and then the Neopets world is animated, like CG or 2D whatever
Yeah.
kind of style of animation? So like when the Neopet goes into the human world, he's like Detective Pikachu style, like kind of like
Hyper-real.
photorealistic sort of
Yes.
thing. And then when the kid goes into the Neopets world, he's like this like cartoon character looking thing, and people are like, weird looking Neopet. Like, what's going on with this? What species is that? Sort of thing.
I love this because since we established that we were going to do this idea, I've been thinking about the poster that I was going to design for this. And now that we've said this, I think it'd be amazing to have a poster that was split down the middle. And on the left side is like whoever we cast as the human character and a very, very realistically rendered Kachik.
Uh huh.
And on the right side is like the, 3D CGI Pixar style
Yeah,
version of it. I think that'd be really cool.
that's cute.
And have this like kind of beautiful like split down the middle. I love that. I think that's a really cool
love
idea.
that.
Great. Okay, so I feel like we got a concept. We got some characters. I think we got the general arc of it. I think we're pretty far along. So I think now maybe we take a coffee break, kind of step back a little bit, have a talk amongst ourselves, just figure out where we're going next, and after the break, kind of come back and figure out what that actual kind of arc looks like. How do we get to that ending that we want to see, and ultimately, like, what does that ending say? What do we want it to say?
Absolutely.
Cool.
Yes.
All right. Well, appreciate you listening, guys, and we'll see you after the break.
Hey guys, thanks so much for listening to another episode of Let's Write. If you'd like to support more of what we do here at Villainy, you can check out our live streams on Twitch every Tuesday evening. The URL is twitch.tv/Villainy Arcade. Now back to the show.
Just kind of give us a little bit of a recap of where we left off. I think we're in a pretty good spot in terms of the main kind of thrust of the movie, right?
Yep.
I think we have this sort of setup of there's a human world and there's a Neopets world, and they're kind of symbiotically linked on a
Right.
magical sense of some kind, and that human children and Neopets children they're like form a bond when they're born, and that carries them through to adulthood and teaches them how to be good people or good Neopets or whatever is the case. But for whatever reason, whether that's what's happening in the human world or whether that's happening with our villain in the Neopets world, that bond has kind of been severed. So these human children are kind of growing up without that sense of adventure and without that sense of discovery, and the Neopets children are kind of growing up in this world that's more and more being subsumed by greed and darkness and whatnot. So we have sort of a human protagonist and a Neopets protagonist. So the Neopet kind of early on we kind of established that he's sort of a, I don't know, like a down on his luck, but very intrepid. Kind of has a lot of big dreams of traveling one day to get out and see the rest of the world. He discovers kind of this plot that is going on to kind of by I think we suggested the villain in kind of the Neopets lore, this Dr. Sloth, who is taking over the Neopets world by severing this connection with the human world, or some kind of characterization of that. Meanwhile, in the human world, I think we have this protagonist. I don't know what their name is. Cindy. I don't know, whatever we eventually come up with, but she's kind of like maybe like kind of like classic kind of 80s 90s movies where it kind of she hasn't really figured out her place in the world. Maybe she does like a lot of fantasizing about like fantasy worlds and like getting out and like discovering something, but doesn't feel like her own world has enough adventure or magic in it. And I think maybe that's kind of the overall arc, is discovering that the real world does have a lot of adventure in it. You just need to go out and discover it, right? So she kind of gets thrown into this plot when her Neopet, who should have had a bond but they've never met before, kind of gets thrown into the human world and hijinks ensue. And then after that, she gets brought into the Neopets world, and from there they go on an adventure together, rediscover friendship and magic and all that good stuff, and eventually bring life and magic back to the Neopets world, sending her back to the human world, having learned a very powerful lesson about getting out there and discovering things.
I
So I think so. We got. I feel like we got a really great kind of premise and really cool arc. Now we just sort of need to fill in the innards of it. The who, what, where, when, and how of how this plot comes together.
Yeah.
So I think last session we weren't super settled on like what that introduction would be. I think we talked a little about maybe doing like a cold open of some kind, an action scene, maybe instead doing kind of more of a routine, like seeing this Neopet go through their life, or maybe even like doing like kind of a voiceover introduction of the Neopets world of some kind. But I think maybe if we start there and figure out exactly how we open, and then we can kind of figure out how that eventually leads to the human world.
Yeah. I think we can ditch the idea of a narrated prologue. I think we've come up with better versions of that, and I don't like that. I think that's lazy writing anyway.
Sure.
So that was just because I couldn't think of a better way. But I think the idea of having him go through his daily routine is cool, and I think introduces basically the that meta aspect that we were talking about, but also shows us the world of
Sure.
Neopia
Okay.
in a cool way.
Yeah.
And in that way you can kind of start in media res, like Dana was saying, just kind of we just meet the Kachik, and he's doing his thing. So maybe it's maybe we start with him at the bank or something.
I love that idea because, like, as a kid, you didn't have an introduction to Neopets.
That's
You
true.
just kind of were thrown in there and
Right.
had to figure it out and
Right.
blunder through.
Yeah, that's very
so
true.
I love the idea of the movie still kind of like mirroring that
Mhm.
a little bit.
That's cool.
Maybe it could be a comedic scene at the bank where, like, you're talking about like that thing where you miss it, like you put your money in, you miss the interest thing. Like maybe it's Kachik
Oh,
missing his interest payment, and it's just like a funny little scene with whoever the bank teller is like another Neopet.
it's a Skeeth, I
And
believe.
he's just like, God damn
Yeah,
it.
he's in a suit, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
That's funny.
Like maybe that could be the opening scene.
Okay.
And then he leaves and he's like, well, shoot, I guess I got it. And then he'll head over to the soup kitchen or something,
But he doesn't have like any money, so yeah, he goes there.
feed himself, and then maybe he tries to earn some money playing games and stuff. And then
Maybe in the middle of a Neopet battle, maybe like he like does Neopet battles or something, or I don't know, or maybe he does the Destructo match. What was your guys' favorite game?
Merc Chase.
Oh, okay, okay. That actually might make more sense for the protagonist, right? Oh, no, you said Merc.
Merc, yeah.
Yeah.
I think they were like the weird little ball people.
I don't remember.
Furry balls.
I don't remember a lot of the games. I'll have to look them up as we're talking.
Yeah.
I am wondering, I love this idea of like starting, like opening at the bank and he's like Overtron or something, or he
Yeah.
can't collect his interest, or he's like, trying to get a loan or something. I don't know, something silly like that. But like, this is a kid's movie, and I'm wondering, like, how can we start with a little bit more like action or levity? Just like, even if it was a brief bit of it, just like open with something and then hit that bank.
Yeah.
What if it wasn't straight like voiceover narration, like this whole expository thing, but what if it was the Neopet? Can we just give him a name so we can, like, just so we don't have to keep referring to it as the Neopet?
What would have been a common name for a Neopet?
Well, here's a question.
Yeah.
Are we calling all of them by their species name, or do they have names and it's like John the Kachik?
I think they have names.
They have names, okay.
Yeah.
Kevin.
Kevin.
Yeah, Kevin.
Kevin the
Kachik.
Yeah, Kevin the Kachik. So what if it was like Kevin voice overing something like really adventurous, like maybe he wants to be like a pirate or something, like on an airship or something like that, and like he's narrating his adventure or something like that, and then it smash cuts to the bank, like he was just telling this story to the bank teller of like, this is why I need the loan to put together this airship so I can go have this adventure, and he's like, just gets like completely turned down. It's like,
Yeah.
no one leaves Neopet City or
Oh,
Neopet
I
Central.
love that.
Just like he was just trying to like rustle up some cash to like for this crazy idea that no one would believe in but him. But like he can see it so clearly in his head that that's the introduction. Like him in like a cool costume, and then you like smash cut to like him in like really like shoot like a cheap clothes. Just kind of like trying to get a loan from the bank.
You just hit me in my feels.
And then I think we can have that thing where he goes through his routine of like trying to struggle through, like has to goes to the soup kitchen or something and picks up a meal. Maybe like like the Force Awakens sort of like scene where she's eating it next to the ATS.
Yeah,
Like, he
yeah,
has his
yeah.
own little like hideout. Maybe he's like plastered up like travel posters from like the old Neopets times. It's like one of them is like, come see the giant omelet. Like he's like eating his thing, looking at it, like imagining he's eating like from the giant omelet.
I love the idea because everyone can't leave Neopia Central. Like a lot of people like don't have homes. So
What
like we really want to show this place in decay.
Right.
So I think that might be a good spot too.
Right.
I don't know that we need to show it in decay. I think in decline.
Decline.
I think decay is a little heavy for a
Sure.
kids movie. I think in decline could work. Could it be that, I like the idea that he's describing something and it's this great big thing and it turns out it's just, more, and they just at the bank the whole time. Could the opening be like he's playing one of the games and he's at the bank telling the teller all about how he earned his coin that he's trying to deposit or whatever? Like, could that be the thing where he's like
Some
in
kind
the
of adventure?
so we could bring one of the games in
Okay.
and he's like, and it's like he's playing the game and then, I don't know, but I do like what you're saying about like, that's why he needs the loan. Like that, I like that as well. So is there a way to merge those two things? Because I think that's a really fun opportunity to bring in a mini game.
Yeah.
right.
We
At the
could figure out
beginning.
one that we like reference kind of subtly, like that's what he's playing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that'd be interesting. Yeah, that's fun. I think the more we can see it in little references here and there,
Yeah.
like it's just gonna be more fun for the fans. But yeah, I think he goes through that routine. Maybe he gets a little bit of food from the soup kitchen. He's like dreaming of his thing. Maybe even like the money tree. Like maybe the
That's what I
money
was
tree like gives
thinking.
him a handout of just like here's a little bit of food or something like that. Like maybe he gets to the soup kitchen. The soup kitchen's out. Like he didn't even get a meal for the day there.
So I don't know if you played in the last like couple years, but now
not.
Neopets can wear clothes,
Uh-huh.
and like the first bit of clothes you get is a sack to wear,
sack.
just like a brown sack. So like I don't know if we want to incorporate any of that because there's also like a money tree version of that in Neopia Central.
What if it starts raining?
Yeah.
And like he's just like sitting there sad, and like the money tree just like hands him like a beaten up umbrella, but it's still like something nice. It's
Yeah.
like, okay. Like,
And the rotten shoe or whatever, or like you know what I'm talking about? There's always that like broken shoe and the
old boot. Or something.
yeah, the old boot or something.
Yeah, that'd be fun.
I'm like in my head, I'm seeing this scene of him walking through the streets of like downtown Neopia or whatever, and there's like posters on the wall behind him that are like Easter eggs. Like one of them is like, get the amazing fairy paintbrush. It's like this advertisement for it, and then there's a guy on the street like, hey kid, you want to buy like an omelet or something? Like he's trying to hawk him something like a jelly or jam or something.
Oh my God, you're a genius. Okay, so like one of my favorite things was the fairy paintbrush for Aisha's. And so what if it was like a poster? Because there's also the movie theater in Neopia Central of like one of the Aishas is like a movie star sort of thing. And that's one of the ones that joined the party later. And she's like a fairy Aisha. Something. Because we have to have the others eventually drop in somehow
it's
too.
it's like a rich one, like a
Yeah.
and you like think she's like snobby at first, but then really she's like a good person. And,
Yeah.
it's part of the crew. That could be funny.
Yeah, I like that.
Okay,
Yeah.
cool.
And I'm looking at you because Dana has the map up right now of Neopia Central. There's that rainbow pool. Would it be kind of funny if it was almost like a physical object in the world? Like it's like translucent. It's like otherworldly, but it's and then as he's walking, he kind of looks up and like one of the color bars kind of like flickers and shuts off, and then you see another Neopet like the blue went out again, and they gotta go like turn it back on. Like just like it's not decrepit, but it's kind of
Yeah.
It's not as
kinda-
magical as you'd expect.
it's kind of falling apart. So I think let's go back to the beginning for a second. Like just like
Sorry.
figure out what that is. Like so, do we want it where maybe he's playing a mini game and he's right about to win and get the coin, and then something bad happens to him, and then it hard cuts to at the bank, and he's like, and so like that's how I almost had the coin, but I don't quite have it, but I'll get it tomorrow. I'll win the meerkat race tomorrow, but can you just front me right now for a sec? Does that work? Does that cut work?
Yeah. I like the idea at the beginning though, establishing like how like adventurous like this Neopet is. Like
I agree.
like his dreams are way too big for like his place in life sort
Yeah.
of thing, Like I kind of like the idea of it being a fantasy that he's narrating, like because it makes total sense to him. They're like, this will work if someone just believes in me. But like to everyone else in the world, it's like obviously not. Like, come on.
Okay, so then maybe it's the loan that he's asking for at the bank. He's gonna take and then go bet on one of the put into one of the games. And so he's narrating. He's like, and so what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go take to the game and I'm gonna do this, and then I'll win. It'll be amazing. And then he's narrating his like heroic version of what he's gonna do with that money, and that's how we show the mini game. And then it comes back to like, and so really like if you could just help me, and they're like, we're not gonna fund you because like based on the games, like no one does that anymore. Like maybe that's how you work in the mini game, but still have it in your model where he's asking for the loan and he's narrating a fantasy.
Okay.
So this fantasy happens to involve the mini games.
Okay.
Does that work?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think so.
How do we establish the young girl or boy who comes into this world? Because if we're starting off in Neopia,
Yeah, so we talked about we talked about it kind of towards the end of the first act or maybe mid first act, he would go through his day and the Kachik would stumble into the portal through into the other world,
Right.
and that's how he would meet the other
But
person.
then how do we establish that person?
We
So
haven't-
like
we haven't
what?
gone there yet.
Because we have to get through their learning curve and going
Uh-huh.
back into the real world,
Right.
correct? So right now it sounds more like we're establishing first with the Neopet. Like,
So like goes through their day. Like we established that his dreams are traveling, but he's like really down on his luck. Then something happens where he stumbles into something big. And like there's like almost cliffhanger-ish thing where like we cut to the title and then go to the human world.
yeah, I
I
think
think
so.
like what can he see or happens to him or something.
I'm thinking, like, stop me if I'm wrong here, but I feel like Dr. Sloth invades Neopia Central and takes some Neopets for like some sort of like experimentation or something. Like we need to establish the big bad pretty early on too, right?
Uh-huh.
So maybe that's what happens is like he's taken and then we flip over to the human side real quick or something.
What if he's abducting Neopets and then like turning them into like evil versions of them by like siphoning like negative energy from the human world? Like,
That
it's like
yes.
fostering like negativity in the human world, which he's like using to like mutate Neopets, and those are like the bad guys we like encounter throughout, like getting attacked, by like these monster Neopets.
And he wants like really passionate or like Neopets to like turn for like to help see if like the experiment goes well or something. I don't know.
Okay, so maybe he stumbles upon like an abduction, and he tries to stop it because he's like he's really good-hearted.
Yeah.
Yeah, so like I'm not sure like how does it like end though? Like how does it cut? Like I think we need like a big moment where it just like stops and then we hit the human world.
I think
and
he
we slow
just
down for a bit.
he gets captured.
Oh, he gets captured.
I think he gets captured
Oh,
because he's
yeah,
gonna
yeah.
somehow escape out of that cell
right.
and then go through that portal or whatever to the human world.
Like he gets like thrown into a sack and like cuts to black. Like that
Yeah.
that's cool. I think that's a really just
Roll
effective,
titles.
like poof,
Yeah.
yeah. And then we cut there and then we're in the human world with Cindy. I don't know whatever her name
Cindy.
is. I
We'll
don't
go with
know.
Cindy for now.
We're bad at names.
Subject to-
apparently. We're discovering today.
Subject to change, all of it.
Honestly, I love Kevin the Kachik. I'm totally fine with that.
Good. Kevin's
Yeah.
good. Okay, but I think like we cut to her kind of. I think like her mirror of that, her daily routine.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Like she like wakes up, like she's getting woken up for school. Like she doesn't want to get out of bed. Like she hates school. She like misses the bus or something. Has to like walk to school.
Mm-hmm.
Goes to school. Like she's like drawing in her notebook. Like weird like little illustrations, not paying attention. She gets in trouble or something. So again, like her head is always out there. Like she wants like a big adventure to happen, but
I feel like she should live in like a very industrial city, whether that's New York or LA or whatever, like somewhere where there's like not a lot of exploration. Maybe she's not allowed to go outside by
Sure.
herself a lot because it's dangerous or something. But like she's just very repressed from being able to like live outside home, basically. Because like I feel like if it was like a country kid, like they would just go explore outside and stuff. So I think it needs to be somewhere where like they're kept inside a lot.
maybe it's like a sort of kind of a post-industrial sort of city, like a Chicago or something.
I was
Oh
thinking
yeah,
Chicago,
that too.
A Detroit or something like that, where like you can tell like certain areas of it used to be very prosperous, but kind of maybe on a decline, or it's not the best areas to live in anymore.
Yeah.
And so like I think like kind of mirroring what her Neopet is going through in the sense like it's being brought up in an environment where she doesn't really feel like there is a sense of wonder or discovery or adventure, and because of that she just kind of assumes her world doesn't have adventure and discovery in it, and so she loses herself in these like fantasies and in her imagination, and like I wish I was like in another story sort of thing. And that could be cool. So I think we see her kind of go through her daily routine, and then maybe I don't think the sequence needs to be that long to really establish
No.
this. I think we only need to see it once. Maybe like something bad happens at school. Maybe she gets bullied a little because again she's like always like out in the clouds sort of thing. She doesn't really doesn't make friends. She doesn't.
Man,
have
we're
a
just describing
whatever.
me at this point.
I took this out of your diary. I'm actually
Oh,
reading
man.
line by line. Yeah, we dug that up. But I think yeah, like maybe she's like has an encounter with bullies or something, and she goes home and she's kind of like upset and depressed a little bit. Like she clearly wants something more out of like what she sees as the world.
Yeah.
And maybe like that's when we introduce the Neopet. Like there's a sound in her closet or something like that, or like
Yeah.
something like there's like an animal in there, and she gets like really afraid, and she goes in. And it's like the Neopet is like stuck on a hanger or something. Like he's like just swaying back and forth. Like, can you help me? Like a little help or something like that.
Yeah.
Like, I think that'd be really like kind of cute introduction.
Why do I want Ryan Reynolds to play the Kachik?
Oh my gosh, this is not Detective
I know,
Pikachu
I know.
already.
Not Danny DeVito.
No, no.
Jeez. I really like that.
Okay, yeah, it's good.
And what if that closet interesting. What if that closet is that portal then?
Oh, okay. So,
Yeah.
Okay, so
I mean, I like the idea of, just because I think I said this before the podcast, but I like the idea of them being sucked into like a monitor or
Right.
something. But I also understand, like, we don't want people to think it's a virtual world. We want them to know that this is just a separate world. So
that's true.
I don't know if that would be confusing, but so maybe a closet would be better
Okay.
or something.
Well, let me throw something weird out.
Mhm.
Do it.
If Dr. Sloth is trying to kill passion and kill sense of discovery and adventure
Mhm.
through, let's say, like the introduction of technology, like he's trying to facilitate all these tools and things like video games and all these things into the world of the human world, so that they lose their passion for imagination and adventure, right?
Uh-huh.
By that token, like maybe a lot of the products that are being sold in the human world, like that like video game consoles and all that stuff, maybe those are actually like his devices, or he's like
Oh,
had some sort of
interesting.
say in those things, where he's put something in the technology or whatever. And
Ooh.
and by that token, instead of her going back home, maybe she like goes through a mall or something on her way home from school, like it's her usual path,
Uh-huh.
and she stops by like her favorite game store or something.
Okay.
And the
Ooh.
Kachik has, because like if we're tracking his journey, like from being in prison and then in Sloth's lab in Neopia, he would maybe find his way through one of the technology portals and come through into where the products, like I haven't quite figured out that part yet, but
Yeah.
do you know what I'm saying? Like,
What if we like played it like it's not sci-fi, but like a little bit like sprinkle of dystopia, where like there is like a Walmart-esque store that like it's just like it's replaced like the strip mall, like mom and pop sort of stores. It's just like the mega mart sort of thing, and like that's actually Sloth's kind of like influence, like building this like shadow corporation sort of thing.
I love
like,
it.
Maybe I don't know if she has like our main character has like a part-time job there, or like she has to go there to get groceries or something like that, but it's sort of like taken over their like little neighborhood of like this like imposing, gross, like corporate everything store sort of thing. Maybe that's like the portal that comes through like the technology that's in there or something like that.
can a store be called like H Lots or Slot H? Like what was that store, Big Lots or something? Like, but then it's like
It's
Sloth.
like oh, okay, like yeah,
Can it be?
Sloth Mart?
sloth.
No, I'm just trying to think of like an anagram, like Slot H or H Slot. And like that means it
Yeah.
means just as little as Walmart,
Yeah.
Yeah, it could be funny. Okay, so maybe that's how they meet.
I think that makes sense in terms of how he would get there.
Yeah, that does make sense to me.
And I think there's I don't want to spend like forever in the human world, because again, like I think it should be
Yeah.
a small part of the story, but I do think there's time for some like a couple gags where like the
Yeah.
Neopet is like a little oblivious that he can't just walk around and like investigate on his own, and so like our main character is like getting really frustrated with him, like to, like trying
Yeah.
to hide him. Like maybe she puts him in like a little coat or something like that, and there's like this tiny little thing like walking next to her.
Yeah. I'm just imagining this little thing in like a Walmart basically, and like
Yeah.
trying to get it like
Oh my God. Could they pass by the art aisle and she like turns around. She's like, and anyway, so what we're going to do? And he's gone. And she's like, where did you? And then she goes in the art aisle and he's like, he's got a paintbrush and he's just like tapping himself and nothing's happening. Like he's just poking himself. He's like, why doesn't this work? I don't understand. Like it's not working. Poink.
oh
Poink. She's like, what are
no.
you doing?
Yeah, I think we should definitely have like if the store is like everything in it, like have like a gag where like she has just like chasing him down aisles almost, like he's just getting in trouble because like he's so curious and he wants to like
Yeah.
investigate
Yeah.
everything. Like he like with the paintbrush thing, like he paints himself like entire color and he's just like dripping paint, and she's like just trying not to get in trouble. And there's like this trail of footprints that she's like chasing after him in the
I love
store.
that
So
so
cute.
much.
He's just waddling.
That could be super funny. And she's like taking clothes off the racks and stuff like that to like cover him up, and he looks like a tiny little child like wearing a coat or something. That'd
Yeah.
be funny.
Maybe he finds the frozen omelet section.
Yeah, he finds the food
Yeah.
section. He's
That'd be
like,
great.
Tries to bite into it, but it's frozen.
She's saying
Where'd
it's like,
you go? I'm right here. He's got like frozen omelet in his mouth. I love that. Can he be played by Jake Gyllenhaal?
Why Jake
what are these
Gyllenhaal?
casting choices?
I don't know. I just want that voice,
Huh.
I'm not against it.
I think Jake Gyllenhaal could do a cute Kachik voice. Kevin.
Kevin.
Huh. I was actually thinking more like I think I was actually thinking more like who plays in The Amazing Spider-Man?
Spider-Man.
Yeah,
Andrew Garfield.
Andrew
Yeah,
Garfield?
Andrew. I don't know. He has like
Yeah.
that voice to
I could see
me.
it, kind of a little sarcastic, but like kind
Yeah.
of little devilish.
Oh, that
Little,
could be
yeah.
good. I
I
would
could
And
see
see
it.
it.
it's a
Yeah.
little higher pitched than like
But I mean, he's
a
a tiny
Jake
little thing,
Gyllenhaal.
like-
So like, you know,
I think because like the Detective Pikachu, like the gag is he has this like deep masculine kind of Ryan Reynolds like voice,
Yeah.
right? But like I don't think we necessarily want that.
No.
Like I think he should still have like a little bit of higher tone with his
Exactly.
voice, right? Like
Yeah, I
Andrew
think-
Garfield would be really fun.
Maybe Gyllenhaal can play the Jellert.
now that would make sense. I
Let's
feel like a
just do it.
Jeller would have a deeper voice.
Let's do that. Okay, I like that. So then we have the gag in the supermarket, and then somehow they got to get back into Neopia.
Mm-hmm.
And then when they pop back into Neopia, where do they end up?
I feel like they need to start back in Neopia Central.
I think that's wasted momentum, though. I think we just send them back to where we've already been several times.
Well, the other idea that I had was they actually land in the space station. The coincidence.
Okay.
That's how you see the whole world, and we can like kind of like pseudo introduce it.
Oh,
And
I
then,
see
like,
what you're
it-
saying. Like we could show the world in like this really cool CGI version of the Neopets map that everyone knows. That's
Yeah,
cool. That's
and
cool.
then from there, because there's just the random guy in the coincidence. I can't remember his name, but he gives you a quest basically. So maybe like that's how we learned a little bit about like what's going
He's like
on.
Dr. Exposition. He's
Yeah.
like kind of like this is what's like fills you in a little bit. This is what's happening, and then kind of sets the story in motion.
And then you go on a little crazy quest.
Yeah, he's like, "How'd you guys get up here?" He's kind of a crazy cast Christoph Waltz.
You really like casting.
He's not
here.
animated. He's live action.
Yeah,
in costume.
yeah, he's real.
I
Yeah.
love it.
What Neopet is that up in that space station?
Here, let me click on it.
Oh, you're actually playing Neopets while we're recording.
Playing Neopets.
You don't play Neopets. You experience it. Julian.
Sorry. Oh, that's totally Christoph Waltz.
Yeah, that looks
Oh,
like.
that's perfect.
Yeah, that's perfect.
I can't remember that species name. It's the squirrel-looking thing. They like kind
It's
of.
not the Usul or whatever. He doesn't. Is he an Usul or Usul or? I don't think so.
He'd be like, I don't know what you are doing in here,
He's
but
hyper stylized, so it's actually kind of hard to
since
tell.
you are here, maybe you can help me get further in my discoveries. Okay,
But
so they're in the space station.
Yeah. So I
Yeah.
think I think maybe it might help now to kind of like now that we're in Neopia proper for the rest of the movie, or almost all the movie, like to like determine like what the locations are they're gonna visit. 'Cause I really like that idea of like they're at each step like kind of Wizards of Oz style. They're like gathering companions.
Sure.
To eventually like they'll need all of them together to confront the final bad guy.
Interesting. Oh, sorry.
Do we think the Haunted Woods then is the last place they would go to confront? Where is Sloth's lair?
He's up in the moon, technically.
Oh, he is on the moon?
Yeah. Like
mean-
it's Krellador or whatever. Yeah.
We don't necessarily need to like defeat Sloth here, but maybe just like foil his plan
His
this
plan.
time, and like
Yeah.
maybe we tease like he's still up on the moon, and he's
Oh,
just
okay.
like, "Oh, I'm gonna get you next time," sort of thing, you know?
Yeah.
Like,
Okay.
and we tease like eventually there's gonna be that confrontation.
But I think we need the help from the fairies
Mm.
this time.
I think like Neopets lore wise, like there's like because there's the Neopets, there's no humans, but there's the fairies. So like and like two distinct species there, of like the Neopets and the fairies. And I think like every major event has had like some component of like the fairies in it. You know,
Exactly.
I think, and we were kind of checking out the map kind of before this recording and just kind of looking nostalging out a little bit about them. But I think after kind of both of us stopped playing at some point, there was some event in the Neopets game where they actually crashed the fairyland, which was like this floating kind of
Cloud
cloud
City.
island sort of thing, and like Age of Ultron style, like smashed it into the ground and formed this crater where they rebuilt like their community there. I think it could be interesting, kind of like visual metaphor sort of thing for the climax of the film, the main goal to like raise it back up into the sky, and that's kind of what helps bring magic back to the world and what like stops Sloth from converting these Neopets into these monsters, and kind of like kind of bring light back to like the entire world and like makes it an open, explorable place again.
What does that do in the context of the human world?
Like, what like does it like immediately affect like something in the human world, sort of thing?
Yeah, like what is the effect of that in the human world that makes everything better?
Maybe it like lightens or maybe kids start like looking away from their screens for like 2 seconds and like realize, oh, like I don't know.
Why?
What if there's like it like causes some kind of like Like it doesn't need to be that like on the nose. Like we go like, oh, and now all the kids have imagination again.
Oh
It's like
yeah.
something happens like in the sky, like a really bright star or something like really like kind of cool happens to, like reflect like the two worlds, something happening at the same time, and we just see like these kids like looking up from their phones and being like, oh, what's that sort of thing. Like you can see like curiosity kind of coming back to them, like their imagination has been sparked by something that's out there, that they go find and explore. It
I
doesn't
love
need to
that.
be as like explicit as like, and now the world is fixed, but more like maybe we're back on the right path, and maybe just this little push is all they need.
I love that. Maybe something happens like a Northern Light
I
situation,
was literally about to say that.
or like like people get fascinated with the blood moon and stuff. Like maybe it's a celestial thing, and then the kind of like epilogue of the movie, the end of the movie is kind of like the way that the Last Jedi ends with the kids telling the story, and then the kid walks out and he sees the shooting star,
Sure.
and he holds the lightsaber. Maybe we kind of do like a little thing like that where the kids are all of a sudden looking through the telescope and they're outside, not inside playing games, and they're like Johnny, come here, like look at this, like look how it's changing, and it's like days are happening and they're still looking, there's this, and they're drawing kids are drawing pictures of it in their notebooks. And
What if it was like, and again, I don't want to like dip too much into the sci-fi, like, 'cause I want this to be a relatable world. But what if it was like, not just that like giant shop, the Sloth Mart or whatever it is, but also like he's like in control of like the TV shows, and they're all this like bland like crap like that's being broadcast through, and like there's billboards and stuff, and like those like really phony looking ads sort of things, and like he's like influencing like this culture of like malaise and just like mediocrity sort of thing. And we see like on TV screens and stuff these like shows that he's like kind of broadcasting through, and like so that last scene is like we see like the TVs again, and they're playing these shows, but no one's looking at them. Like the kids are outside and they're looking through the telescope or something
Yeah.
like that, and we just kind of imply that like his influence over this world is like weakened, and now like curiosity and adventurousness is coming back into it.
that's great.
Can we please have one of the screens like have a YouTuber out there going, "Hey guys, like welcome back."
Hey guys, sorry I haven't posted a video in a while. Okay.
And- okay.
I love that. I think that's a great way to end the film. So
So
Wait.
we're building towards, I think.
Sorry.
Yeah.
That happens, and
Uh-huh.
I think after that, the moon should go black.
Our moon.
Yeah, in the
Okay.
real world.
Oh,
Because
okay.
he's on the moon in Neopia, so it only makes sense that he's also on the moon somehow in our world too.
Interesting. Okay.
So when we like bring all this hope to like build up to the next movie, like all we show is just like a moon go black, and that's it.
Okay.
I don't know.
Okay.
It's just like visually in my
yeah,
head
a little,
seems
like,
really like
teaser
ominous.
of like
mhm.
the Thanos something or Neopets cinematic universe. Okay.
Yeah.
That's funny. Okay, so I think if we're working towards Fairyland to kind of be that like last big kind of visual, like we spent all our budget on the visual effects shot sort of thing. I think we need like one or two steps to get there, so we can gather some characters to get on the way, right?
So then Dr. whatever his name is, not sorry, the scientist guy in the thing, he probably should be like, how did you guys get here? And then the Kachik could be like, well, I don't know, I just was going about my day, and then that's maybe the one part of the movie we're gonna have to have some exposition.
Yeah,
and they're like, what are you doing? And he could say, oh, well, I've been trying to figure out why Fairyland fell. And he could be like, Fairyland fell? What are you talking about? Fairyland's been held up there for thousands of years. And he'd be like, well, yeah, I've been up here, I've been studying, but that's why he's been up there. Like, I'm trying to figure out why it fell out of the sky. And, it's causing this, he could just give that explanation. And then that would also give them their quest of like, you need to get Fairyland back up. And so then he's like, look, I can send you guys back down, but you just need to tell me where, like, it's probably best for you to go to X.
Well, I really do think they should go back to Neopia Central. I feel like the Kachik would want to go back to like maybe get some stuff to like for familiarity a little
we could
bit.
pick up that Aisha character.
And
like,
that
who's
and that's
the
exactly what I was
celebrity
about to
sort of thing.
say, which is she could be staying at the Neo Lodge for the debut of her movie coming out at the theater.
Ah,
And so that's how we get the next characters as they go into there, they run into each other or something.
right. Maybe our Kachik, because he's like a low citizen sort of thing. Like he's getting in trouble, and she kind of like, not out of pity, but like out of being like a turn of good faith, like helps him get out of a situation with like he's getting arrested by the Neo police or whatever. I don't know, whatever the situation is, but like she helps him get out of that and like realizes he's on this quest, and like kind of that sparks something in her to be like, I think I want to join you on this.
I think it should actually be the human that gets in trouble because now the human is the fish out of
Yeah.
the water situation.
Oh,
So
okay.
like they bump into that Aisha, and then that sparks something.
Interesting.
What kind of Neopet are you? I've never seen. Just like pulling at his cheeks and like poking his head. Like, I've
Yeah.
never seen you. What kind of Neopet are you? Here's my thing though with
Yeah.
that. Like if we're actually like honestly analyzing the character motivation, like we've established this is a Kachik who's wanted to explore his whole life. He's dreamed of adventure. He's on a space station. He has an open choice of a map and can go wherever he want. Why in God's name would he go back to Neopia
Maybe it's
Central?
not a choice. Maybe it's just like he gets teleported or like shot out of the space station back towards that. Type of, okay, sorry. Oh, go ahead.
No, go for it.
Okay, like I know we like changed the beginning a little, so it's like a mini game. But what if? Okay, I don't want to erase that. So put that back in our back pocket. But like, what if we go back to the original concept where he's like fantasizing about like an airship or something that he wants to pilot and go explore the world. So he's gone back to Neopia Central to get his airship that he's actually been building. And like in that fantasy, it's this like crazy, awesome, like cool ship. And in reality, it's this like horribly strung together, like duct tape and balloons sort of like machine that he's been cobbling together for
For
like,
the money tree stuff that he's been
yeah,
getting.
there's like a boot on it. There's like, just like all these like random parts that he's assembled, but like they need that to go explore the like to get to Fairyland. And then of course like it gets them out of the city like barely, and then like it like very quickly does not continue to work and like crashes them somewhere where they have to continue their adventure on foot.
It could crash them in Terrania.
Oh.
That's the wrong way, though.
Yeah, Julian.
Yeah, that's across a little bit of ocean. So, we could, instead of doing Neopia Central 2, we could start in Terror Mountain. Because it does stick up, so maybe it's easier to, like, drop people off from a spaceship there? Question mark.
Is that further or closer to Fairyland from Neopia Central?
That's further from. So it'd give us a little bit more leeway and places to, like, visit, I guess.
They could also go to one of those castle. I forget what they're called. The castle cities.
There's
could be-
Marydell, and then there's also Brightvale.
That could be where that rich Aisha is.
That's true. That's true. And well, I was thinking we'd find the loop there because I always imagine loops are like night-like, and you know, I would imagine that's where we'd find like a very like heroic loop or Gellert.
I know the viewers can't or the listeners can't see this, but can you point out to me on the map where Fairyland is, so I have a sense of geography?
So Fairyland is kind of in the middle.
So it's down there.
Yeah, but it's like the southern continent. So it's like south of Neopia Central, south of Brightvale and Marydell, and it's
So what about this? What if he drops them? Are you familiar with the map, or do you need to see it?
Spin it around real quick.
Okay.
Let me get a fresh.
So let me just try this out. So what if, since Terra Mountain's at the top, what if he's like, what if he needs to get to his airship so that they can get to Fairyland, right? Or maybe the airship is the thing. Maybe there's a thing still, one piece of Fairyland still floating, and they need to get there, right? And he needs to use his airship to get up there, right? So maybe they get transported from the space station to Terra Mountain, because that would put them pretty far away from Neopia Central and Fairyland. Then they can have this journey down through Terrania, through the, what is it? Was the castle one?
Marydell?
Marydell, then to Brightvale, then to Neopia Central to get the airship, and then they finally are able to make it to Fairyland. Maybe that's that's his trajectory.
I like the idea of like getting to Terra Mountain, because it's like, as you went out a mountain, like if they got like shot out of space, like they ended up in a mountain, like fun little like sledding sequence almost getting down the mountain. And then we could have Bruce be one of the little penguin guys, be one of the companions. I'm not in love with the idea of them going back to Neopia Central, because I feel like once we start the adventure, like it feels weird to repeat the location.
Right.
Like either it starts there or like we don't go back there. But I mean, if it's on the way, like maybe it just feels weird to me to like.
I don't think we would
the
go
adventure
back
starts
up.
And then
I think
I'm a little bit torn on that one.
I think instead, if we were gonna do it, it would be Terra Mountain to Marydell to Brightvale. And then somehow we try to get to Fairyland, but something stops us from going through those plains there, and we have to go through the haunted forest.
Gotta go to the haunted forest.
If we have to go that route.
Okay, but I think Terra Mountain slides right into Tyrania. So and then Tyrania as a peninsula extends right next to.
But they don't touch.
Marydell.
And I'm a little afraid of us doing too many places in a movie. You know what I mean? Like, there's only so many settings you can change before it might get a little ridiculous.
But look at the map. Like, they have to cross an ocean to get to Marydell, right? So the most logical thing would be for them to slide down a mountain with Bruce in Terra Mountain, ride a pterodactyl from Tyrania over the ocean to Marydell,
Okay.
and then proceed from there.
Okay.
And that way you hit your your beats
Mm-hmm.
and your locations.
Yeah.
And I dramatically, I like getting thrown onto Terror Mountain accidentally or like not intentionally better than just like landing back in Neopia Central.
Hmm.
Mm-hmm.
I like that a lot because the adventure started. Like I don't want to go back
Right.
there.
Oh, okay. What were the 4 that we want in the movie, like as the core team?
Gellert
A Gellert,
or
right?
Gellert, sorry.
Gellert, whatever.
I actually don't know how to pronounce
Gelson's,
it. I'll look it up.
Uh, and then
Aisha.
an Aisha, and then a Loop, and then our Kevin the Kachik.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so let's just tentatively pencil like Aisha in Neopia
Mm-hmm.
Central. Where do we think it'd be make the most sense to meet like a Gellert, and maybe we can work our way backwards a little bit, like not necessarily even like a location, but like just from a narrative sense, like what is their role, like what do they do, and then we can figure out like how to bump into them.
I don't know. What is the Gellert? I don't know that they were like specific to a location.
I think it's less like, and they're from Tyrania or whatever, but more like this Gellert, like he's like a businessman, or he's
it.
like he's a farmer or something, and we figure out like how we get him out of his role into the story.
I want to say that they're all adventurous in some way, but they're stuck in their situation. So maybe this Geller is in Terror Mountain, and like maybe he's just selling snow gear, but he just really wants to get off Terror Mountain really badly. And that's where we meet him. Maybe they land and they're next to the snow wager. You remember? Yeah, like they land near the cave,
and they have to be real still.
Yeah.
And then there's like an idiot Bruce who like waddles in or something and trips over the tail or something like that. That could be funny.
And then maybe we find the Geller stealing the treasure and running out of the
he's
cave.
Like a little like roguish kind of like like Indiana Jones sort of like thief sort of like kind of thing. Like I like that a lot. Like and they interrupt his theft. Like, and that's like it enrages the Snowager, which again like for non-Neopets fans is like this giant ice worm, and in the game you could try to steal from him like once per day, and sometimes he would wake up and try to murder you. But I think that's a really fun bit of fan service. Like it's like they maybe like out of the space station, like it's almost like a visual gag, like they shoot out like a cannon, like a little escape pod.
Yeah,
and, like it's like the trajectory is to like Fairyland or something like that.
Yeah.
But the peak is in like the middle of the trajectory. Like they didn't calculate it. So like smacks right into the mountain.
Yeah.
And like they slide through and they have to get down from the mountain. They stumble into the Snow Edger cave and they meet this Gellert.
Yes.
I think maybe put a different Neopet there as opposed to, because so I'm reading on the on Wikipedia. So this is what it says about Gellert. The Gellert is a loyal and brave canine like Neopet. Many Neopian legends tell tales of a Gellert's selfless acts of courage. Once you befriend one, you can guarantee you have a faithful pal that will never let you down. I don't know that lines up with him being like a thief and they interrupt him in the middle of a theft. Although I'm looking at the description of a loop, and the loops are wolf-like Neopets who are brave and loyal to their owners and friends. They tend to be a little overconfident, however, and they enjoy adventuring to new territories. So that actually,
so maybe it's the loop.
I think maybe the loop fits better.
And then we find the Gellert and Merrydale or Brightvale as the knight.
Loops are incredibly loyal and like to spend their time prowling around Neopia.
Okay.
So maybe it's that because if it's describing him as overconfident, maybe it's that he had the whole thing planned out. He kind of gets caught in a prickly situation. They happen to arrive, help save him and help him get out. And then that's why he's loyal to them.
Interesting.
Because they helped him out. Okay. And so then we have the loop in there. And I kind of like the idea of that wolfy guy being the Indiana Jones.
Okay.
Okay, so then are we cool with it? Because then everything else can stay the same.
Mm-hmm.
You just swap out the character.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I'm still not sold on Tyrania. Like, I don't...
It might be one land too many.
Yeah.
It's literally perfect, though, in terms of how they get across the ocean.
With a pterodactyl.
Pterodactyl, yeah.
If we did that, I think we need to skip one of the kingdoms.
Yeah, you don't need to go to both of those places. They're the same thing.
Of the two, I think Brightvale was the one that's had... No. Merrydale was the one that's had the most problems, correct? Like,
so
because I remember there was the floating Drake war thing.
Yeah.
I forgot.
Evil city sort of thing.
Yeah.
So I looked up Aishas, and they're known for their magical abilities. So whichever Brightvale or Merrydale seems more magical is probably the place we'd want to go to meet the Aisha.
Okay, so I think Merrydale because it has Darg and Citadel, which is that floating like evil thing. So maybe as we're flying towards Fairyland and we're trying to get there, that's where we're shot down.
Hmm.
And we have to like make it across the rest of the way
Okay.
on foot.
Yeah, that
Okay.
could work.
Wait, they shoot the pterodactyl down? Ouch.
Yeah. Well, I don't know if it's a pterodactyl or if it's like something else. But
Okay. Do we want a sequence in like what are they doing in Tyrania? I think like what's the
they're going to
What
the
did you do in the
omelet.
game in Tyrania? The omelet,
the
right?
omelet? Oh, the omelet.
Yeah.
Well, there's
maybe-
the omelet, and then there's also oh, what is it? Shoot. Did you guys ever play those wheels?
Oh yeah,
the
the,
wheel
you
games.
spin the wheel.
Yeah, there's the Tyranian one. The Wheel of Mediocrity, actually, which actually perfectly plays into the whole. But there's also a village there. There's yeah, I think the best thing is the plateau, the omelet.
Hmm.
So let's see.
Maybe they can help.
There's also the lair of the beast there, but that's very much like the Snow Wager scene, so I don't
Sure.
know if we would want to do two of those.
There is so I think in the like the explanation for the omelet. So in Tyrania, there's like a giant omelet that all the Neopets they're allowed to like come take a slice of, and I think the explanation is that like a giant pterodactyl like drops an egg there every day, and then the egg just cooks in the sun, sort of thing. Like
Yeah.
maybe
and-
they meet the thing that drops the egg. Maybe there hasn't. Maybe Kevin is like so amped to like finally meet the giant omelet. Like he's like so excited to like he's finally here, but there is no omelet. Like there hasn't been an omelet in a while. It's because like that pterodactyl hasn't dropped an egg forever, and like they go to find the pterodactyl and make friends with it somehow. And
Well, that's
She's
the
the
lair
one.
of the beast, I think.
oh, that's the beast.
Yeah, because
Okay.
I'm almost sure that the beast is a pterodactyl in the cave.
And then,
Oop.
and then on its way. Oh, it is. Yeah, it totally
Okay.
is.
Yeah.
And then on its way to drop them off, it drops another egg. Like they figure out, and they kind of like save Tyrania in a way
Hmm.
on their way to like unintentionally, but they
Uh-huh.
do, you know. And then
What if they like crash into Tyrania, and like they get in trouble? Like the whatever those T-Rex sort of species is, like they almost get thrown into like Tyrania jail sort of thing.
sure,
like-
Okay.
He's like questioning like what happened here, like where's the omelet, like why is everyone sad or whatever, and they go like, oh, they haven't dropped an egg in forever, and like they offer to like go see what's going on with the beast, you know, in this cave, and that's why they get let out. Like, all right, if you can fix this, we'll let you go. And so that's why they're like coerced a little bit into like figuring out what happened there.
okay,
And I don't know how they solve that problem, but they do. And then that
we can figure that part out later.
pterodactyl
Yeah,
takes them to their next stop.
sure. Okay, let's do that. Okay, so we're figuring out our Act 2 a little bit. I think we're coming up close to the end of Act 2.
Yeah.
I would think at this point. So they get to what was the one of the two kingdoms that we're going to?
Merridell.
Merridell. Okay. So they get to Merridell, and that's probably where they meet the Aisha.
And the Gellert.
And the
Because at this
Gellert.
point, we're probably midway through the movie.
Is there any sort of like sports thingy in that Merridell or wherever that?
Yes.
Because I imagine the Gellert being like sort of an athlete maybe that he meets.
Well, I'm thinking he's a knight, right? Like,
Yeah, he could be like a
and
knight.
there's a castle. I mean, there could easily be a tournament. Oh yeah, there's literally the Ultimate Bullseye, which is one of my favorite games actually, where it's just like you shooting an arrow into a bullseye. So it could be like a tournament or something going on.
like a racing tournament or something like.
Yeah.
And he's a really good athlete, and he kind of helps them out.
Sure.
So where are they trying to get to again?
Fairyland.
They're trying to get to Fairyland.
So they're not going to go back to Neopets Central. They're just trying to get.
Guess
Yeah.
probably not in this model. I think that'd be
yeah.
They're just trying to trek through. Okay. So then, how do they? What's their What's their plan to like? Why are they? What's their plan? Like, where are they trying to go? What's the tool that they're going to use to get to Fairyland?
I think like realistically, if we want 3 locations for 3 character introductions, that just basically means like one or more of them needs to be pretty concise. Like we can't spend a ton of time on each location. I think like Terra Mountain being like we crash land into it, we can have that quick character introduction. Maybe the rest of that is just a like brief action set piece. Like they crash into it, they ruin the loops kind of heist sort of thing. They get chased by the Snow Wager down the mountain, so it's just like avalanche sequence where they're being chased down the mountain and slide right into Tyrania, and that's the whole Terra Mountain sequence. I think It's pretty short, and then the actual like character introduction, like where we really get to know this loop and they bond as a group, is in Tyrania, where they have to like as a group figure out this problem together before they can escape. And then we can spend a little bit more time in Tyrania. We haven't figured it out yet, but somehow befriend the beast who carries them across the ocean, drops them in Meridel, and then we can carry on the story from there.
Okay.
Have the last two character introductions, and then they move on to Fairyland. And then I think at some point on their way there, they get sidetracked, they get thrown off course or whatever it is, and they end up in the Haunted Woods.
Okay.
I think we can meet the Gellert and the Aisha probably
In the same.
and married. They can be maybe related or know each other. Not related, but like they can have a related
It could
story.
almost be like what is it? A medieval the lance. What is it called when
Jousting?
jousting? Yes,
Okay.
like there could be like some sort of jousting tournament, and maybe she's in the stands like watching,
Hmm.
and like there's like this weird moment where the Gellert like flirts and like wants her favor or something, and we just kind of like get crash landed into this kind of part of the story.
I like the idea of like a tournament happening because that could also be the perfect part to just have our little brief Flotsam, Jetsam, Key and Peele playing both parts. Like have those
Yeah.
guys as like they're a duo.
Yeah,
They do a water carnival sort of thing.
I like that.
We could just have a couple little side characters there,
Uh-huh.
and then they meet them.
Maybe they meet them. Because the Kevin the Kachik has met with the Aisha before.
Uh-huh.
Like he pleads with her to like maybe help them get to Fairyland somehow,
Mhm.
and like because she has money and connections, is more able to help with the rest of this journey.
So I think to get the people, because if we come in and they're enjoying this like carnival and they're having a good time and it seems like a pretty happy kingdom, I think in order to create the narrative momentum necessary to get these people to join their party and also to get to the Fairyland part of things, maybe it's a thing where Sloth kind of comes in and starts wrecking things. You know, it's because they try and convince, this thing's bad, these bad things are happening, we need help, we need to get to Fairyland, and nobody's really taking. They're like, it's the carnival, go away. Like we're having a good time, and then he comes in or sends some of his little, what were those little Neopets called that were like his minions?
Grundos.
Like maybe he sends those in and they attack, and then everyone's like, oh my god, this is crazy, and she's like, okay, I'll go with you. And the Gellert's, because he, like you said, he's flirting, so then he's like, well, I will go too. I can't leave a lady to be alone, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And so then maybe that's how we could get them on their way, and then she can say, okay, I have a way to get there or something. I know how to get there. I have a friend or something. Does that work?
Yeah. I
think so.
kind of like the idea of like all of because of the state of the world, like no one's leaving like their lands.
Yeah.
So, like these characters have never left like Meridel or whatever. Like
Yeah.
the Gellers live there forever. Like maybe like the loop they meet in Terra Mountain is like he's not like the rest of them are like kind of kids sort of like characters, but he's like an older sort of like grizzled kind of. He remembers the old days when you would travel around all the different worlds, things like that. It's like he's kind of like not necessarily the guide, but a little bit more of like a little bit more of an exposition and explaining like what these worlds are. Like we're crashing into dinosaur land and like medieval lands, just kind of giving a little bit of context there, and that would kind of explain like how they get lost as they leave.
Yeah.
I actually have the perfect way to tie in Meridel's importance as well.
Uh-huh.
Because like we're pleading with the Aisha and the Geller or whatever, like, and they know that land fairly well. Illusion's Glaive is there, or Glade. Illusion's Glade. She's the fairy that you get like quests from. And fairy, hello, like we need to help Fairyland. So I think maybe we go to her through like either the Geller or Aisha's knowledge and like kind of like get some item or something to like help propel us to the next part. Whereas like how the heck are we supposed to get this Cloud City back up and running? Like we haven't actually discussed that yet.
Right.
Like what is that thing?
Ooh, maybe they discovered like what that mechanic is in like the Haunted Woods. Okay.
I think so, but maybe Illusion like or like that fairy is like you need to go here to get some thing or some
Sure.
knowledge or whatever.
Uh-huh.
And they're like, oh no, not the Haunted Woods kind of
Yeah.
situation. Like, oh no, like what could like possibly we find in there? But like there needs to be something that sets us on that course, and I
Right.
think maybe that's what it is.
How about it's just like he's built a device in the Haunted Woods, and it was a device that was kind of like a tractor beam sort of thing, and it just attached and dropped Fairyland to the ground. It's keeping it stuck there,
Yeah.
Interesting.
so they have to go turn
Okay.
that off. and have this, spooky climax.
Mm-hmm. And maybe Illusion knows about it or something and sends us on that last part of the quest.
Can I throw something like wide out there and then you help me
Absolutely.
narrow it in? Okay, like what if like because I think like in some sense like the fairies are sort of like not proxies for humans but proxies for like the magic in the world, like in the
Mm-hmm.
lore of Neopets. What if like in this instance like they have left like Neopia, like no one's seen a fairy in forever. Like we're trying to like that, so bringing fairyland back will bring the fairies back or something like that, which will bring magic back to the world.
Mm-hmm.
So what if what if as they're like leaving Meridell, like they get lost and they go the wrong way and they end up in the haunted woods and they meet like someone who's like hiding out there, like has like a spooky cave or something like that, and it's the last fairy who didn't leave with her sisters because it's the darkest fairy from Neopets lore, who's like the
Shadora
evil.
or whatever.
I don't. Did she ever have a name? I
Yeah.
don't remember. Okay, yeah,
Yeah.
but the evil fairy.
Yeah.
So she's been left behind, and so like she's not really the villain, but she's a little bit like a malevolent force. But she's like almost like sad that she got kind of left behind, and she explains like how to raise Fairyland back, and maybe it's like to raise Fairyland back will like it takes like a sacrifice or something like that, like or an expression or something like that, like something a little bit less like tactile, like they have to blow up a device, but more like
Well, there's also the brain tree.
oh,
And
the
the
brain tree is in the Haunted Woods. That's right.
Yeah. So you have to like ask it a question or like, it asks you a question. Maybe we need to get an answer from it.
That's interesting too.
Yeah. I like the idea of there not being fairies in the world anymore, but maybe we have to go to the brain tree or something to like find out why.
Maybe the kid can answer that question.
Interesting. Okay.
And actually, the more I think about it, the more I feel like Dr. Sloth doesn't even necessarily need to be in this movie per
Like
se.
physically.
Yeah.
Other than in the beginning to establish.
And maybe, and like you said at the end, maybe that's where it's like, everything's happy, and then in a mid-credit scene, it's sort of like, Doctor, the little Grundo comes in. He's like, Doctor, they managed to raise Fairyland again. He's like, well, it's all going according to plan, or something like that. And that's where you see Sloth.
Yeah, so like maybe it's like instead of the kidnapping sequence in the beginning, it's not Dr. Sloth. I mean, it's the Grundos,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, like kind of goofy little like a burglar sort of characters. That could be interesting.
I don't think he needs to be, because he's not really been in any of the rest of the movie. So it'd be kind of weird to just throw him in again.
Right. He's
So-
like more of like a looming
Yeah,
threat.
he's a looming
right?
threat. I don't
Like
think
a
he needs to be.
Sauron.
Yeah, and I think you can have sort of a Chitauri situation in terms of like the Grundos are just this force that it's going to invade and stuff like that.
Okay, again, like pull me back if this is too much, but like I know this is a kids movie, but like I feels appropriate in my head for like the inciting like chain of events that leads to Fairyland going back up, or even like before that, just as like the darkest moment for this group is to have that like older mentor character like die. And, like to kind of almost represent like that was the old guard of Neopets, but like paving the way for the new people, this new generation to take their spot and to rekindle their sense of adventure or something like that. Like that character's death, like or sacrifice or something of that sense helps them like inspire them to help Fairyland raise back up.
Do you actually want to kill the character?
Maybe I don't. Is that too dark? 'Cause it's
Might
a
be.
kids movie, but like I feel like characters die in kids movies.
They do. If it were to happen, it would have to happen in the haunted woods, I think, because that's a dangerous place.
Maybe,
In my
yeah.
head.
Maybe it's not an overt death per se, but it's like you're right, like a sacrifice. Like he joins the brain tree in the dark portal or something. He did like some sort of like, yeah, we're not going to see him anymore, but it's not like not an overt. He died. But yeah, I like that. I think that's good. Like, and this is the loop, right? He gets the moment of like, because he's the old guard mentor.
Or maybe
Yeah.
he's taken.
I just feel like in my mind, like I'm having trouble with that, like the mechanic that raises Fairyland again. Like it feels weird to me if it's just like a device or it's just
Right,
something
right.
they
Yeah.
punch or something. Like I really want it to be like maybe it's corny, but like their inner heart or goodness or inspiration or them finding hope again is what brings it back. Like
It needs to be magic of some sort.
Right.
Maybe
Yeah.
it needs to be something with the kid, because the human hasn't really had any agency up until like we haven't really talked about that.
Yeah.
Sure.
So maybe it has to be something with like the kid is the only person who can do it by rediscovering their sense of adventure, or
Passion.
discovery, or passion, or something. Maybe it's something like that. And like that's the human being there is like key to that sort of thing.
sure.
Maybe that's what they find out at the brain tree.
Yeah, I like the idea of the brain tree and like this riddle type Sphinx situation, and then the kid having this moment with the tree.
Hmm.
I think that would be kind of cool.
Yeah, it feels like an oracle-ish character, you know.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
Reveal the last key piece of information.
yeah,
Okay, I think we're in the treatment. We need to figure out what that scene looks like as it plays out. But I think we know
Mm-hmm.
what we want it to feel like, right? To bring back Fairyland back up. It's this kind of like emotional sort of rekindling of the magic within Neopia that occurs, and then as a result of that, the human returns to her own world, and we kind of get like little glimpses that not only she has been changed, that she is ready to kind of rediscover adventure in her world, that that sense of curiosity is back, but also like her entire generation, you know, like
Mm-hmm.
they're disconnecting a little, like this incredible cosmic event in the sky has kind of inspired this generation again to look up again and
Yeah.
to rekindle what's out there. And then the very end, or as a mid-credit scene or something like that, we see like
sloth.
Sloth is still up there on the moon, like
Mm-hmm.
plotting his next move.
Yeah.
And we could be like a zoom out through the celestial event, whatever is happening. We kind of like, like a zoom out of the earth. Like these kids are looking through a telescope, and we slowly zoom out, pass through this beautiful cloud of stars, go back, and then you go to the back and the dark side of the moon, and then
Mhm.
that's where he is in his little, his
Yeah.
lair. I think it's cool.
I like that.
I think
Okay.
there's a couple pieces we have to figure out in the ending,
Yep.
in the treatment, but I think we have a lot of the beginning and middle of the movie
Mm-hmm.
fleshed out pretty well.
Cool. Okay, so I think at this point we're ready to kind of start writing, start getting this on paper.
Yeah, I
and
think so.
hopefully in the next week or two we'll have a nice little treatment bundling all this up with a proper ending and a tease for the Neopets cinematic universe.
Yeah.
Yes.
Um,
The NCU
the NCU. Oh my God.
and PCU, maybe even. I don't know.
Yeah, so thanks for listening, guys. You can, as Ryan mentioned, check out our website. That's where we'll be uploading the treatment when it's done. And our website is letswritepod.com. You can also check out all of our previous episodes, our previous treatments, and everything is up there. You can also follow us on Twitter and Instagram at Let's Write Pod, and we're constantly updating that with cool little tidbits from all of our little projects. And also, please review us on iTunes if you enjoyed this episode. It's how we get our omelets, so to speak. It's we got to eat. And I didn't really tie that metaphor together very well. 5 omelets out of 5. That would be a great iTunes review. So yeah, stay tuned for the treatment, and we'll see you guys next time.
Bye.
Goodbye.